Day in Wave Country.
And we're back on Morning
Yeah.
Show.
I'm just putting things in my ear.
Yes,
Excuse me. I'll be right there.
We're talking about next finance in government and politics. I shouldn't say government, I should say politics, because there's been a big hubbub about that whole thing.
Well, Mike, scrunch over here just.
Okay.
Scrunch over.
Well, that's my favorite word. There has been talk since Kennedy, the late President Kennedy ran, that money in campaigns and running media campaigns is important. And you're from Common Cause, which is seeking to finance campaigns publicly. Is that really feasible?
We think it is. I'm from Common Cause, Kentucky. I'm a volunteer here in Kentucky. And we feel that well, here's how we look at it. In politics, campaigns are either financed out of a person's personal wealth or from contributions that individuals make to the candidate. We feel that when these contributions are made by people who are doing business with government, as they so often are, that you've got the contribution made by a fellow or a woman who does business with the state, and that person is simply going to add the amount of the contribution to what they charge the state, and maybe even a little bit more. So we have a system of public financing now. It's just that we're not paying for it now. We're paying for it after the fact.
Yes, but Mike, isn't there such a thing as a limit on how much a particular person or corporation or company can give to a political campaign?
Right. There are two things in Kentucky. First of all, a corporation cannot contribute to a campaign in Kentucky. Secondly, an individual...
They get around that, though, don't they?
Do they?
With individuals?
Well, you know, individuals who are active in a corporation and who own the corporation can contribute, but that has to be their money, and at least it has to be their after-tax money. That is, a corporation has, if they want to go to that trouble, they have to give the person a $5,000 bonus, $3,000 of which goes to a campaign, and the rest to taxes or whatever. And secondly, there is a $3,000 limit on an individual contribution in Kentucky. But that doesn't mean that I can't give $3,000. My children each give $3,000. My wife, my parents, and we found that in 1975 in one of the elections, where corporations were giving their employees money, or rather were giving the campaigns money and saying our employees gave it.
Okay, so what you're saying is that elections, in essence, have been bought.
Well, what we're saying is that campaign financing has not always been on the up and up.
If you're talking about, and by the way, we will be taking your calls because we'd like to know what you think, and we'll be taking your calls on open line at 585-2291 if you have any thoughts on this particular subject. If you're talking about financing campaigns, you're not talking about the primaries, are you?
We're talking about both, yeah, because especially in Kentucky.
How would it work with primaries if you've got like 9 candidates?
You've got everybody and his brother running out there.
Well, there are ways that you can qualify the candidates. For instance, in the national system, the presidential primary elections in 1976 were publicly financed. And in that election, in order to qualify for the public money, a candidate had to raise $5,000 in contributions of $250 or less in 20 states. That was deemed to be a way of showing that the candidate was bona fide. And then, of course, the general election for president in 1976 was wholly publicly financed.
Yeah, but they also could use some of their own money in that, couldn't they?
Yeah, in the primary, the public financing took the form of matching contributions of up to $250 would be matched by the presidential election fund. That's generated by our dollar checkoff on our federal income tax. And then in the general election for president in 1976, each campaign was given just over $20 million with which to run their election, and that was it. Excuse me, they were not allowed to spend any other money.
I was not aware of that.
Is there a limit on media money that can be spent on television money? Would there be?
Well, that would, of course, be up to the legislature. They could design it any way they wanted. Nationally, there isn't. Nationally, in the presidential election fund, there is it's up to the campaigns, the candidates, to spend the money as they choose.
So let's say, since we're going into a gubernatorial election, it's relevant to use that as an example. If you were financing if the state legislature passed a bill that said that state elections were going to be publicly financed, how much money theoretically would you be talking about, and how would it work?
Well, after this year, you could be talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars, the way it's been going. But I think this was an unusual election, and to look at this past Democratic primary as an example of all elections would be a mistake. There were a large number of major candidates and a large amount of money spent. In terms of dollars, you're talking about on a matching basis. Remember, our whole concept is a matching system of public financing. That is, matching small contributions that are made by individuals so that you encourage individuals to participate in the system. These days, people don't have as much time, say, as they could, and you have the activists in politics oftentimes being job holders or office job seekers.
Mike, let's take a couple of telephone calls from our viewers. Again, we're talking with Mike Ward from Common Cause. Good morning. You're on Morning Show. Your question, please.
Yes. I was curious, let's take, for example, John Lyle Brown. We realized the bulk of the money for his primary came from his personal wealth. At least we know where it came from, and he shouldn't be indebted to other private sources as opposed to another candidate. And my question is, don't you feel, in fact, that is preferable if it is a competent candidate?
Well, you know, if you only want rich people holding office. But I don't think that's very fair. The idea that only people who have a lot of money can run is simply not what America's based on.
But all of the candidates spent about the same amount of money, did they not?
No.
I mean, it was just a difference in time span.
No. I see what you're getting at. No, Brown spent, maybe half again as much as Sloan or as Hubbard did. And Stovall spent maybe 20% of what Brown did.
Mike, let me ask you something. How come every time we have an election year, that's when we start hearing about this? And then in between elections, it all falls right in the crack and you don't hear anything about it?
Well, it's hard to get on shows like this when it's not topical. And that's what it is. You know, it's the public's attention is drawn to this kind of thing. We've brought this issue up in 2 past legislative sessions. In one year, they instituted a $1 checkoff in Kentucky, which goes directly to the political parties.
Not to the individual.
Not to the candidates, and we don't like that very much because of a number of things. One, a person has to say which party he wants it to go to on his or her income tax. We feel that income tax and political parties should be separate.
How would it work?
How would it work? You'd check off $1 on your income tax of your income tax. It would not be an extra
Kentucky
$1
income tax.
on your state income tax, and it would go into the gubernatorial election fund.
That only happens every few years.
Right. Well, you got 4 years to build it up. See, that's the idea. Is you spend it's just like the national system. Every year you have a $1 checkoff, but you only spend it every 4 years.
Mike, let me ask you something. Now, I know in Southern Indiana, when you purchase your license tag, of the $12.50, $6.25 goes to the political party in power. Is that the same thing in Kentucky?
No.
Okay. Let's take another call. Good morning. You're on Morning Show. Your question, please.
Yes, my name's Rebecca Morris. I'd like to know your gentleman's credentials in answering these questions.
Okay.
Okay, you're on the spot.
I'm an activist, is what we call people who are in Common Cause, who believe strongly in the things that we're talking about. I don't hold any political office or public office. I'm a volunteer in Common Cause. But I have studied this issue very carefully and have spent a good deal of time paying attention to such political things.
By the way, we'll give you the address in a little bit. Common Cause will be happy to send you more information than you can probably ever read about this particular stuff. One is how money talks in Congress and many other studies and information about Common Cause. We have another phone call, I think we can take.
This is almost like, or your group, Common Cause, is like consumerism in political financing now.
Well, the idea is that every other group, or most other groups, have some sort of a lobbying effort. Doctors, lawyers, electricians, just about every group you can name. But citizens who don't have anything more in common than being voters and being citizens don't necessarily have a lobby. That's what Common Cause hopes to.
Okay, let's take another call. Good morning. You're on Morning Show. Your question.
I'm Roberta Hutchison. I would like to know why the campaign could not be consolidated into, say, 6 weeks or 2 months, rather than have such a long period of campaigning where you are completely worn out hearing all the different sides. With the media the way it is today, it could all be covered very quickly on television by everybody.
Okay. How would you respond to that?
That's what John Y. Brown did. I think we've got a
Narrowed it
perfect
down
example of that, yeah.
To 50-some days.
Do you think that they
something.
will ever try to consolidate the whole thing down?
Well, the
even
difference,
shorter?
you know, in England, for instance, with parliamentary elections, which are called almost on the spur of the moment, whenever there's a constitutional crisis or a vote of no confidence in the prime minister, those elections are 60 days, sometimes 90 days. In America, we have our elections set up so that I can tell you when an election is going to be 8 years from now, so that it's hard to limit. If a person wants to run for a particular office, that person can begin today to go out and work.
Well,
and
if you
make
limited,
contact.
if you were to give campaign money to a particular candidate, you'd have to start giving it, know who your candidate is 4 years before.
No. I should have made that more clear. You build into the law a system that allows for the timing. So say that, you know, the election was 1979. You could build into the law that the money would not be dispersed until the 1st of January 1979. So the candidates would be discouraged from running their campaigns until the election year
Oh,
at
okay.
least.
So anyhow,
wasn't
people
clear.
want more information, they can get in touch with Common Cause here in Kentucky. There it is right there. Post Office Box 5271, Louisville, 40205. That's Common Cause. And again, if you didn't get a chance to write that down, just call the Morning Show office here. We'll be more than happy to give you that address. I want to thank Mike Ward for being with us from Common Cause.
Thank you for having me.
And we've got a little bit more in the show, and we'll be back right after this.